Have you ever wondered why some people seem distant even when they genuinely care about you? Why they can be present one moment, engaged in conversation, sharing time with you, and then suddenly feel emotionally unavailable the next? People with an avoidant attachment style often experience this exact struggle. It's not that they don't feel emotions or don't value connection, it's that emotional closeness feels complicated, unfamiliar, and at times overwhelming for them. Avoidants usually place a strong emphasis on independence. They are used to relying on themselves, solving their own problems, and keeping their emotional world private. Over time, this self reliance becomes more than just a habit. It becomes their sense of safety. They feel most comfortable when they are in control of their emotions and not dependent on anyone else. But when it comes to emotional connection, this same strength can turn into a barrier. As a relationship begins to grow and deepen, avoidance may start to feel a subtle shift inside them. At first, everything might feel easy and natural because the connection is still light and low pressure. But as emotional closeness increases, so does their internal discomfort. This discomfort is not always obvious. It can show up as restlessness, overthinking, or a quiet urge to create distance. They may not even realize why they suddenly feel different. All they know is that something that once felt comfortable is now starting to feel intense. Emotional connection requires vulnerability, the ability to open up, share feelings, and allow someone to see you on a deeper level. For avoidance, this can feel unfamiliar and risky. They are not used to being emotionally exposed, so when they get close to someone, it can trigger a sense of unease. Instead of leaning into that connection, their instinct is often to step back. Another important reason they struggle is because emotional connection can feel like a loss of control. Avoidants are used to managing their emotions internally, keeping things stable and predictable. But when they start to care about someone, their emotional world becomes less controlled. They may find themselves thinking about that person more, feeling affected by their actions, or experiencing emotions they didn't expect. This shift can feel unsettling because it challenges the control they are used to having. To regain that sense of control, they create distance. This distance can come in many forms: slower replies, less engagement, or emotional withdrawal. From the outside, it may look like they are losing interest, but internally, they are often trying to balance their need for connection with their need for emotional safety. Avoidants also tend to keep their emotions at a surface level. They may enjoy spending time with someone, have meaningful conversations, and even show care in subtle ways. But when the relationship starts moving into deeper emotional territory, they hesitate. It's not that they don't want connection, it's that they don't feel fully comfortable staying in it. This creates a repeating pattern. They get close, feel something real, then begin to feel overwhelmed. As a result, they pull back to protect themselves. After some distance, they may feel ready to reconnect again, but the same cycle can repeat. Understanding this pattern is important because it changes how you interpret their behavior. Their distance is not always rejection. In many cases, it's actually a response to growing feelings. The more real the connection becomes, the more it challenges their comfort zone. And until they learn how to manage that discomfort, emotional connection will continue to feel like something they both want and struggle to maintain at the same time. Another deep reason why avoidants struggle with emotional connection comes from how they learned to deal with emotions early in life. Many avoidants grew up in environments where emotions were not fully supported, understood, or responded to in a consistent way. Sometimes their feelings were ignored, dismissed, or even seen as a burden. Because of this, they slowly learned that depending on others emotionally was either unsafe, unreliable, or simply not worth it. So instead of expressing their feelings, they adapted by suppressing them. At first, this might have been a protective response, but over time, it became a habit and eventually a part of their personality. They trained themselves to stay strong, to not need too much from others, and to handle everything on their own. This gave them a sense of control and independence, but it also created distance between them and their own emotional world. As adults, this pattern doesn't just disappear. It shows up clearly in relationships. When someone tries to connect with them emotionally by asking deeper questions, expressing care or wanting vulnerability, avoidance may feel uncomfortable without fully understanding why. It's not that the other person is doing something wrong. In fact, the interaction may be completely healthy. But because they didn't grow up with this kind of emotional environment, it feels unfamiliar, and anything unfamiliar can feel unsafe, even if it isn't. Because they are not used to sitting with their emotions, avoidants often struggle to identify what they are actually feeling. Instead of clearly recognizing emotions like sadness, fear, or attachment, they may just feel uneasy, irritated, or mentally overwhelmed. This confusion makes emotional connection even harder. It's difficult to communicate feelings when you don't fully understand them yourself. Another layer to this is that avoidants often disconnect from their emotions very quickly. The moment something feels intense, they may shut it down without even realizing it. This automatic emotional shutdown becomes their way of staying in control. But while it protects them from discomfort, it also blocks deeper connection. Another reason avoidants struggle is because they often associate emotional closeness with pressure. When someone wants more time, more communication, or more emotional presence, avoidants can interpret it as a demand, even if it's expressed gently. This creates an internal reaction that feels like, this is too much, or I'm losing my space, or I won't be able to meet these expectations. Even if these thoughts are not fully accurate, they feel real enough to trigger withdrawal. So instead of moving closer, they create distance to relieve that pressure. Avoidants also tend to minimize the importance of emotional connection as a way to stay comfortable. They might tell themselves that they don't need deep relationships, that they're better off alone, or that emotions only complicate things. These beliefs act like a shield, but underneath that shield, there is often a quiet desire for connection. They may enjoy someone's presence, think about them often, or feel a sense of attachment, but at the same time, they resist going deeper. This creates an internal conflict that is hard to manage. They want closeness, but they also fear what comes with it. Another important factor is that avoidants often rely more on logic than emotion when dealing with situations. When something emotional happens, their instinct is to analyze it, understand it logically, or find a solution. While this can be useful in many areas of life, it can create distance in relationships. Emotional connection is not always about solving problems, it's about feeling understood and seen. So when their partner expresses emotions, the avoidant might respond with logic or silence instead of empathy. This can make the other person feel unheard, even if the avoidant didn't intend it that way. Over time, these patterns repeat and reinforce themselves. The more avoidants avoid emotional depth, the more unfamiliar it becomes. And the more unfamiliar it feels, the more they continue to avoid it. It becomes a cycle that keeps emotional connection just out of reach. But it's important to understand that this pattern was learned, and anything that is learned can be unlearned. With awareness, patience, and small, consistent efforts, avoidants can slowly reconnect with their emotions. They can learn to sit with feelings instead of shutting them down, to communicate instead of withdrawing, and to experience closeness without feeling overwhelmed. And over time, emotional connection can stop feeling like a threat and start feeling like something safe, natural, and deeply meaningful. Another reason why avoidants struggle with emotional connection is their deep fear of dependency. For them, relying on someone emotionally can feel risky, almost like giving up a part of their independence. They are used to being self sufficient, so the idea of needing someone, even in a healthy way, can feel uncomfortable. In their mind, dependency can be linked with losing control, getting hurt, or being disappointed. Because of this, when they start feeling emotionally connected to someone, they may unconsciously try to reduce that feeling. They might distract themselves, focus on other things, or create emotional distance just to avoid feeling too attached. It's not that attachment is bad, it's that it feels unfamiliar and unsafe to them. Another layer to this is the fear of vulnerability. Emotional connection requires openness, honesty, and the willingness to be seen as you truly are. For avoidance, this can feel exposing. They may worry about being judged, misunderstood, or rejected if they show their real emotions. So instead of opening up, they protect themselves by staying guarded. They might keep conversations light, avoid talking about deeper feelings, or change the subject when things get too personal. On the surface, everything may seem normal, but emotionally, there's a wall that prevents true closeness. Avoidants also tend to value emotional control very highly. They feel comfortable when they are calm, stable, and unaffected. But emotional connection naturally brings unpredictability. Feelings can shift, intensify, and sometimes become overwhelming. This unpredictability makes them feel like they are losing control of themselves. To avoid this, they may suppress their emotions or distance themselves from situations that trigger strong feelings. While this helps them maintain control, it also limits their ability to fully experience connection. Another important factor is that avoidants often have a habit of focusing on flaws when things get too close. When a relationship starts becoming emotionally significant, they may begin to notice small imperfections in their partner or the situation. These flaws might be minor or even normal, but in the avoidance mind, they become reasons to question the relationship. This is a way for them to create emotional distance without directly acknowledging their fear of closeness. They might think, maybe this isn't right, or something feels off, even if things are actually going well. This mental shift allows them to pull back while convincing themselves it's a logical decision. Avoidants also struggle with staying emotionally present. Even when they are physically there, their mind might drift away when conversations become too emotional. They may feel the urge to disconnect, change the topic, or end the interaction. This makes it hard for the other person to feel truly connected. Another challenge is that avoidants often don't express reassurance easily. In emotional connections, small reassurances like expressing care, appreciation, or commitment help build security. But avoidants may feel uncomfortable saying these things openly. They might feel it's unnecessary, too vulnerable, or difficult to express. As a result, their partner may feel unsure about where they stand, even if the avoidant does care deeply. Over time, all of these patterns, fear of dependency, avoidance of vulnerability, need for control, and emotional distance, combine to make emotional connection feel complicated and draining for avoidance. But it's important to remember that these behaviors are not intentional attempts to hurt others. They are protective strategies that were developed over time. And with awareness, those strategies can change. Avoidance can learn that healthy dependency is not weakness, vulnerability is not danger, and emotional connection does not mean losing themselves. It simply means allowing space for another person while still maintaining their own identity. And once they begin to understand this, emotional connection starts to feel less threatening and more possible. Another major reason why avoidants struggle with emotional connection is their tendency to shut down when emotions become too intense. When feelings start to rise, whether it's closeness, conflict, or vulnerability, their system can quickly go into protection mode. Instead of processing the emotion, they disconnect from it. This shutdown doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's very subtle. They may become quiet, give short responses, lose interest in the conversation, or mentally check out. On the outside, it can seem like they don't care, but internally, they are often feeling overwhelmed and trying to regain control. This pattern makes emotional connection difficult because connection requires staying present during emotional moments, not escaping them. Another reason is that avoidants often confuse calmness with emotional safety. They feel safe when things are steady, predictable, and not too emotionally intense. So when a relationship starts bringing deeper feelings like attachment, vulnerability, or even strong affection, it disrupts that calm state. Instead of seeing this as a natural part of connection, they may see it as something that needs to be reduced. So they pull back to bring things back to a level that feels manageable. Avoidants also struggle with expressing emotional needs. In many cases, they are not used to asking for support, attention, or reassurance. They may feel like they should handle everything on their own. Because of this, even when they do have emotional needs, they often keep them to themselves. This creates a disconnect. Their partner may be willing to support them, but without communication, those needs remain unmet. Over time, this can make the avoidant feel even more distant, without fully understanding why. Another important factor is their discomfort with emotional expectations. In close relationships, there are natural expectations, like being present, communicating, or showing care consistently. For avoidance, these expectations can feel heavy. Even if the expectations are reasonable, they may interpret them as pressure or responsibility that they are not ready to handle. This can trigger thoughts like, I can't keep up with this, or this is becoming too much. As a result, they create distance to reduce that pressure. Avoidants also tend to process emotions internally rather than externally. They think through their feelings instead of talking about them. While this can help them make sense of things on their own, it limits emotional connection because their partner is not included in that process. So even when they are thinking deeply, it may look like they are distant or uninterested. Another challenge is that avoidants often take longer to understand their own emotions. While someone else might immediately recognize that they feel hurt or attached, avoidants may take time to realize it. By the time they understand what they're feeling, they may have already created distance. This delay makes emotional connection feel out of sync. One person is ready to connect in the moment, while the avoidant is still trying to process what's happening internally. Avoidants also have a habit of downplaying emotional moments. If something meaningful happens, like a deep conversation or a moment of closeness, they may act like it's not a big deal. This helps them avoid feeling too much at once, but it also reduces the depth of the connection because those moments are not fully acknowledged or built upon. Over time, these patterns make emotional connection feel inconsistent. There are moments of closeness, followed by distance, followed by confusion. But the key thing to understand is that avoidants are not avoiding connection itself, they are avoiding the intensity that comes with it. And once they learn how to manage that intensity by staying present, expressing small emotions, and not shutting down immediately, they can start to experience connection in a way that feels safe instead of overwhelming. Another important reason why avoidants struggle with emotional connection is their habit of deactivating their feelings when things start to get too real. This is something many avoidants do without even realizing it. As soon as they feel themselves getting too attached or emotionally involved, their mind starts to create distance automatically. They may suddenly feel less interested, less excited, or even question the relationship for no clear reason. This doesn't mean their feelings disappeared, it means they were suppressed. Deactivation is a protective mechanism. It helps them avoid the discomfort that comes with strong emotions. But at the same time, it blocks the natural flow of connection. Instead of allowing feelings to grow, they interrupt them. They interrupt. This creates confusion not only for their partner, but also for themselves. Avoidance might start thinking, maybe I don't feel the same anymore, or something is missing, even if nothing has actually changed. These thoughts feel real in the moment, but they are often driven by discomfort rather than truth. Another reason is that avoidants tend to associate emotional closeness with long term responsibility. When a connection starts becoming serious, they may begin thinking about expectations, commitment, and future pressure. Even if no one has said anything directly, they can feel like a lot is being expected from them. This can make the relationship feel heavy instead of enjoyable. Because of this, they may start pulling back to avoid what they imagine is coming next. It's not always about the present moment. It's about what they think the relationship will demand in the future. Avoidants also struggle with receiving emotional care. While they may be okay giving support in small ways, receiving deep emotional attention can feel uncomfortable. When someone shows too much care, affection, or concern, avoidants might feel exposed or unsure how to respond. Instead of leaning into that care, they may minimize it, ignore it, or create distance. This is because receiving care requires openness, and openness can feel vulnerable. Another layer to this is that avoidants often have difficulty trusting consistency. When someone is consistently present, caring, and emotionally available, it can feel unfamiliar. They may unconsciously expect that something will change or go wrong. So instead of fully relaxing into the connection, they stay slightly guarded. This makes it hard for them to fully experience emotional safety, even when it's actually there. Avoidants also tend to prioritize independence over connection when they feel overwhelmed. If they have to choose between staying emotionally engaged or returning to their comfort zone, they often choose distance. This doesn't mean they don't care. It means their need for emotional safety becomes stronger than their desire for closeness in that moment. Over time, this creates a pattern where connection is repeatedly interrupted. Another important point is that avoidants may not fully realize how their behavior affects the other person. Because they are focused on managing their own internal state, they might not notice the confusion or hurt their distance can create. This lack of awareness can make emotional connection even more difficult to maintain. But once they begin to understand their patterns, like deactivating feelings, fearing future pressure, and pulling back from care, they can start to make small changes. They can pause before withdrawing, question their thoughts, and allow themselves to stay present just a little longer. And these small moments of awareness can slowly break the cycle. Emotional connection doesn't become easier all at once, but with time, awareness, and effort, avoidance can learn to stay connected without feeling overwhelmed and to experience closeness without needing to escape from it. Another reason why avoidants struggle with emotional connection is their difficulty in staying emotionally consistent. In the beginning of a connection, they may seem engaged, interested, and present. Everything feels light, easy, and under control. But as soon as the connection starts becoming deeper or more meaningful, their behavior can start to shift. This shift is not always intentional. It's often a reaction to rising emotional intensity. One moment they are open and connected, and the next moment they seem distant or unavailable. This inconsistency can make the relationship feel confusing because the connection is there, but it's not stable. For avoidance, this happens because they are constantly balancing two opposite needs: the desire for connection and the need for emotional space. When the relationship feels light, their need for connection is stronger. But when it starts feeling deeper, their need for space takes over. This back and forth creates an internal push and pull dynamic that directly affects how they show up in the relationship. Another important factor is that avoidants often struggle with emotional endurance. Being emotionally present for long periods, especially in deep conversations or vulnerable moments, can feel draining for them. Even if they care, they may feel mentally and emotionally exhausted after too much closeness. Because of this, they may start to withdraw simply to recharge themselves. But if this need for space is not communicated, it can come across as disinterest or detachment. Avoidants also tend to delay emotional responses. When something emotional happens, they may not react immediately. Instead, they process things internally, sometimes taking hours or even days to fully understand how they feel. During this time, they may seem distant or unresponsive. This delay can create a disconnect, especially if their partner expects immediate emotional engagement. It's not that the avoidant doesn't care, it's that they need more time to process before they can respond. Another reason is that avoidants often struggle with emotional expression. Even when they feel something deeply, putting it into words can be difficult. They may not know how to say what they feel, or they may feel uncomfortable expressing it. So instead of sharing, they stay silent. This silence can create distance because emotional connection relies on shared expression. Avoidants also tend to underestimate the importance of small emotional gestures. Things like reassurance, appreciation, or simple check ins may not come naturally to them. They might feel these things internally, but not express them outwardly. As a result, their partner may not feel emotionally connected, even if the avoidant does care. Another key issue is that avoidance can become overwhelmed by expectations of consistency. In healthy relationships, consistency builds trust, but for avoidance, it can sometimes feel like pressure. They may think, what if I can't maintain this? Or what if I need space later? These thoughts can create anxiety around staying consistent, which ironically leads to more inconsistency. Over time, this pattern reinforces itself. The more they pull back to manage their emotions, the harder it becomes to maintain steady connection. But the important thing to understand is that this inconsistency is not a lack of care. It's a lack of emotional regulation and comfort with closeness. And this can change. As avoidants become more aware of their need for balance, they can start communicating it instead of acting on it silently. They can say when they need space, when they feel overwhelmed, or when they need time to process. These small changes help create stability without taking away their independence. And slowly, emotional connection begins to feel less exhausting and more manageable. Another reason avoidants struggle with emotional connection is their tendency to overthink and mentally rehearse interactions. When emotions start to deepen, their mind often goes into overdrive. They analyze every word, action, or expression, trying to predict outcomes, anticipate problems, or avoid potential rejection. This constant mental activity can make them feel emotionally detached, even when they care deeply. Instead of experiencing the moment naturally, they are focused on what might go wrong or how they should respond. Overthinking creates distance because it interrupts the natural flow of emotional connection. Avoidants may also fear losing control of their identity in a relationship. They highly value independence and personal space, so emotional closeness can sometimes feel like it threatens who they are. This fear often pushes them to retreat or limit vulnerability, even when the connection is positive and safe.